What's up everybody, Alex from WMD here, back at you again, and this time we're going to be talking about making drum voices with Eurorack modules. As you probably know, WMD does have a few drum modules that are in themselves unique, and we just came out with the carbon and javelin modules, which are filter and envelope respectively, and what this video is going to be is using javelin in the trigger mode to make drum voices that can complement the drum voices that you already have, or let's just say you only have oscillators and filters and things like that, and you want to make a percussive patch. That's what this one's going to be all about. So this one's going to kind of be more of a jam style. We're just going to plug things in, talk about it as we're going, and we'll see what happens. So let's dive in. All right, so you can see here I have two spectrum oscillators, the carbon filter, a javelin envelope / VCA, the time warp slew module, and then I have a mod box, which is a modulation and noise source. And then we have the WMD axis. This is a 2-channel stereo crossfader. So it's 2 stereo crossfaders, also known as 2 stereo mixers. So basically we're just going to use this as a mono mixer to mix some stuff before we bring it to our sound source. All right, so what I'm going to do to start out is I'm just going to take 2 oscillators and a noise source, and I'm going to mix those 2 things together, or 3 things, I guess I should say. So I'm going to take a triangle wave from my first spectrum here. Then I'm going to take the triangle wave of my second spectrum, and I'm going to run that into the other side of axis. So now we can just listen to this output here. We're just using mono, so I'm just on the right sides. And we can kind of hear the 2 together. And we can mix those. We can tune those to anything we want, right? So basically we have 1 oscillator on this side, 1 oscillator on this side, and a mix in the middle. Ooh, that sounds nice and terrible. All right, so now we're going to take the output of this mixer, and we're just going to run it into the next mixer. So we're going to say on the top is our oscillators, and then on the bottom channel, we're going to mix between those 2 oscillator sounds and the noise source. So we're going to take the noise out of Modbox and run it into the other channel. Now when we bring up this fader, we can hear we've got noise in there as well. So yet again, nothing percussive about that. Real droney, right? We could get kind of cool on it. But pretty boring. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna run the axis out into the VCA input on javelin. And then we're going to take that output and run it into our mixer. Now we're not hearing anything because we're not feeding javelin any gates. So I'm going to clear out my Metron, make sure we're starting from scratch here. And I'm just going to use channel number 5. I'm going to run that into the gate input on my javelin. Let's give it some rhythms. So there we go. Now we can tune these 2 things together. So one thing I like to do is think of 1 oscillator kind of as like the gut sound. So we'll do that one much lower. And then we'll do this other one nice and high, which is kind of the ring out. And we're kind of making like a snare sound here. And now I'm just going to mix it to where we barely hear that high end. That's pretty nice. And now on this second mixer, we can choose between just the oscillator and just the noise. So I haven't talked much about javelin and how our envelope's working just because it happens to be set up sounding pretty good. So basically what I'm doing here is I have it in the trigger mode. So when this mode LED is on, that means that when you hit it with a trigger, it's going to go through all of the entire envelope. So just to show you what I mean really quick, I'll just hit it with 1 trigger. And you can hear, we'll even go through a slow attack. We'll make the range a little bit longer. And we'll have it go through the whole thing. Turn that trigger off. Whole envelope goes. If I take that mode switch off and I hit it with a trigger, nothing's happening because my attack is way too slow. So in order to get all the way through the attack phase, no matter where it's at, we turn that mode switch on. So one thing that I like to do when I'm making drum sounds is I'll use that mode switch just so I know that we're in trigger mode. And then I'll turn my decay all the way down and my sustain all the way up. This means that I'm literally just using the attack and the release settings. So now if I bring this back up, whoops, wrong channel, we'll hear that. So I'm going to give it a little bit more rhythm. All right, cool. So that's a very basic analog style snare drum. You can choose how much of that extra high-end sound we want, or we can kind of mix it a little bit lower. But you have fully independent control. So another thing I might do to make this a little bit more interesting is add some FM to one of my oscillators. So I'm going to take the sine wave out of my lower oscillator and I'm going to run that into the FM input on the higher sounding one. Now if we just listen to that side, this is what we've got. So now we can kind of tune that to sound the way we want it to, right? Ooh, that's kind of cool. So now we mix the two. There we go. And now we add this guy. Alright, so now we can get real crazy if we want. We can do some cross modulation, so I'm just going to take the sine wave of the higher spectrum, run it into the first one. Now let's listen to that by itself again. So now this is just this spectrum that we're hearing. That's kind of fun. So now we're just going to take this one, no cross modulation. Maybe add just a tiny bit. Let's add that noise back in. We can also go more on the noisy side and just have that tonal side just be nice and soft. And one thing about Modbox is it is white noise, so we're hearing all the frequencies coming through. So that's pretty low sounding. So I might take this noise and run it through a filter. So I'm going to take it through the carbon filter. And I'm going to go out of the bandpass output before we go into the mixer, which is what we were doing, right? Oh, nope, come out of the Modbox into the carbon, into the mixer. There we go. So now we just need to move our filter to where we're going to hear that. There we go. I might use something like that. All right. So let's just hear this with a kick drum real quick, just so we can kind of put it into context of like maybe actually using this as a snare, right? So go to channel 1. we'll go back to my snare. We'll just put that on 2 and 4. Turn it up a little bit. Maybe we want a little bit more of that snappy sound, so we'll take the noise out more, or give it more noise sound. All right, that's pretty cool. So now let's just get crazy. Let's experiment with it. So we're just gonna run some volt per octave out of Volterra into the oscillators. We're gonna start using more modulation and see what we can do. We'll use some more gates too, obviously. So I'm gonna run into that. And then why don't we, just real quick, since we're doing these 16th notes, we're gonna shorten up the release a ton. And then we'll use a gate from Metron. Or actually, let's use Volterra. We'll use this voltage from Volterra going into the release CV input. And then we'll do some modulation here. Oh, I like that. All right, cool. So now we have that Volterra number 1. Let's just record some voltage for the volt per octaves. That's pretty dope. So now I'm gonna take an LFO and I'm gonna run that into FM on this guy instead. So now we've filtered out that noise. We're just hearing the oscillator sounds. So one of the things that I like to do a lot is this kind of fake hi-hat thing, where I'm basically just running 16th notes into the javelin, and then I'm doing a real short release, and then I'm just using Volterra to bring that release out every time I want it to sound more like a snare. We could add some accents if we wanted to, so I'm just going to take number 5 accent output of the accent module here, run that into accent on the javelin. Turn up the accent level a little bit more pronounced. And why don't I take this envelope out from our javelin and run that into the FM on my carbon, see what that does. Makes it a little bit more spacey. And while we're at it, we've kind of gone away from the drum sounds, like pure analog drums, but this is kind of a cool percussive sound. So now we're just going to add a fracture and give it a gate here, and then some volume. That fracture just kind of reinforces what we've got going on here. So why don't we just add one more? We're going to add the crucible here. Ooh, that was loud. There we go. And now I'm just going to take one of the outputs from one of my oscillators and I'm going to run that into the pitch on Crucible. Gives us more of that hi-hat kind of sound. So one of the things I have here is this exponential LED is on. So this can make us have a real nice snappy envelope. Everybody talks about snappy envelopes. Javelin is an incredibly snappy envelope, especially with this expo on. If we turn it off, still nice. But if we just hold this button, that's medium exponential. And then this is the most extreme. Just gives us a real snappy flavor to it. Alright, so let's just go back to a normal snare kind of sound. Turn off all my FM here. I'm going to take off the volt per octave sounds. That filter's kind of funny on there. That's on that filter on the noise sound. Alright, so let's take this out of here. We're going to take the noise back out. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix again our noise just straight in. And we're going to clear this guy out. And we'll take out our release info here as well. Cool, so now I'm just going to run the whole mix. Instead of going straight into the mixer, I'm going to run that into our carbon filter. So now we just come out of the carbon. I'm going to use the 4-pole side. And we're just going to turn on the wave folder. Here's without wave folding. And then here it is with it. Add a little bit of laser sound with the resonance if we really want to, we can. I might switch to the high pass here. Turn some of that FM off. Ooh, that's kind of nice. So let's just use this as a 2 and 4 here again. Alright, so one last thing I might do is to do some more pitch stuff, but just be in control of it. I'll run my volt per octave signal through the quad attenuator or any attenuator. And then I'm going to take a split cable and run it to both of these oscillators. So then I have this kind of crazy thing. So maybe for one variation I do something more like this. Ooh, yeah. And then add some Volterra maybe into this, more modulation into the release again here. But then I can just turn that off with the quad attenuator. Maybe go back to the other variation here. I like that, that's pretty fun. Kind of like a tom thing with a weird snare. Let's see what pinging the filter sounds like. Let's take the high pass filter, turn it back into a low pass filter here. Here we go. Does not sound as cool as I thought it would. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. We will see you guys next time. Peace.